dust-choked and heartsick. The last remnants of the Cygnus flotilla limped toward Xylos, a promised sanctuary that shimmered with desperate hope and the unspoken threat of the unknown. Among them, a methodical observer with a hidden purpose, and a xenoanthropologist wrestling with secrets that could shatter empires or save them. The refugee ships, a motley collection of battered freighters and retrofitted colony vessels, cast long, sorrowful shadows across the ochre plains of Xylos as they descended. Inside the makeshift landing bay of the Last Light, the air was thick with the scent of recycled oxygen, stale fear, and the metallic tang of overworked engines. Families huddled together, their faces illuminated by the flickering emergency lights, a tapestry of species drawn from a dozen worlds, scorched by the relentless advance of the Krill hegemony. Kael and Thorn stood apart, leaning against a bulkhead, his gray eyes methodically scanning the disembarking crowd. He was listed on the manifest as a logistics coordinator, a bland title for a man whose exploits as an explorer were whispered with awe in starports across the outer rim. Here, however, he was something more, something hidden, an agent of the Galactic Concord, tasked with ensuring Xylos didn't become another failed promise, another graveyard of hopes. His demeanor was calm, almost unnervingly so amidst the quiet chaos, his sturdy frame a point of stillness. He noted the wariness, the desperation, but also the flicker of resilience in the eyes of the displaced. His current mission was to assess the stability of this new, fragile colony, and to identify any emergent threats, internal or external. He wore simple, durable clothing, blending in, yet his quiet authority was palpable to those who paid attention. A short distance away, another figure stood out, though for different reasons. Lyra of the Cathar, a sand strider, was an imposing presence. Taller than most humans, her lean, whipcord body was covered in fine, sand-colored scales that shimmered subtly in the dim light. Her large obsidian eyes, set within a strikingly angular face framed by short dark, quill-like tendrils, were fixed on Kael and Thorn. She was a xenoanthropologist, her official mission to study the legendary human explorer, a subject of intense interest to the Cathar High Council, who were fascinated by humanity's rapid, chaotic expansion. Unbeknownst to her council, and certainly to Kael, Lyra was also a guardian of forbidden lore, ancient Cathar prophecies and songs that spoke of galactic cycles, of creation and destruction, knowledge that the current Cathar regime actively suppressed. Her species were known for their fierce independence and strict codes of honor. A slight against a Cathar was a debt that would be repaid, a promise of vengeance etched into their very being. She carried no visible weapons, but Kael, with his trained eye, noticed the almost imperceptible tension in her shoulders, the way her long-fingered hands sometimes flexed, hinting at capabilities hidden beneath her scaled skin. Her current focus on Kael was intense, almost predatory, but not hostile. It was the focus of a scholar on a particularly fascinating and potentially dangerous specimen. She held a small, crystalline shard in one hand, its surface swirling with faint, captured light, her preferred method of note-taking, as she believed permanent recordings, especially audio or visual, stole a fragment of the subject's soul. The human Thorn seemed oblivious to her scrutiny, or perhaps expertly feigned it. As the final docking clamps engaged with a groan, a wave of anxiety rippled through the refugees. This was it, Xylos, their new, uncertain home. Kael pushed himself off the bulkhead, his gaze sweeping the bay one last time before he prepared to disembark. He had a feeling Xylos would be far more complicated than the Concord intelligence briefings suggested. Lyra, too, felt a shift in the ambient tension. Her mission here was to observe Thorn, to understand the human drive that made them such a potent, unpredictable force in the galaxy. But a deeper instinct, a whisper from the ancient lore she carried, told her their paths were about to intertwine in ways neither of them could yet fathom, tied to the fate of this fledgling world and perhaps much more. The airlock hissed open, revealing the raw, untamed landscape of Xylos, and with it, the beginning of their shared ordeal. The initial processing of refugees on Xylos was a chaotic affair, conducted in hastily erected atmospheric domes near the landing site. Kael, using his logistics coordinator persona, moved through the throngs with practiced ease, observing, listening. He noted the stressed efficiency of the Terran Federation officials, the quiet desperation of the refugees, and the subtle undercurrents of interspecies tension. His unflappable nature allowed him to navigate disputes and gather information without drawing undue attention. He saw Lyra several times, always at a distance, her dark eyes following him. She was clearly a skilled observer herself, moving with a fluid grace that belied her size. He filed her away as a point of interest. A Cathar, so far from their desert homeworlds, was unusual, and her focus on him was noteworthy. Lyra found studying Kael Thorne frustratingly difficult. He was a ghost, blending into his surroundings, his expressions carefully neutral. Her crystalline shard remained mostly blank, unable to capture the essence of a man who seemed to possess no discernible ego, despite his legendary status. Cathar culture valued overt displays of prowess, clear declarations of intent. Thorne was an enigma. She approached him once, under the guise of seeking information about human exploratory protocols. "Explorer Thorne," she began, her voice a low, resonant thrum. "Your reputation precedes you, even to the Cathar homeworlds. I am Lyra, assigned to document human adaptation strategies in frontier environments." Kael turned, his gaze direct but unreadable. "Kael is fine, and I'm just a coordinator here, Lyra, helping folks settle in." His deflection was smooth. "Yet, your methodologies in uncharted territories are of great academic interest." She pressed, subtly trying to provoke a more revealing response. "Survive, adapt, learn. Not much to it," he replied, a faint smile touching his lips that didn't reach his eyes. He then excused himself, citing logistical duties, leaving Lyra with a growing sense of intrigue and a slight prickle of annoyance at his elusiveness. Her honor code demanded respect for proficiency, and Thorne was clearly proficient at more than just exploration. The first sign of serious trouble came 3 zillion days later. A perimeter patrol went silent. Kael, part of a hastily assembled search party due to his explorer background, felt a familiar tightening in his gut. The official explanation was predatory local fauna, but the silence was too complete, too clean. As they tracked the patrol's last known position into a region of jagged, rust-colored canyons, Kael noticed subtle signs that spoke of something far more organized than territorial beasts. Scuff marks from heavy boots, not claws, the faint, almost undetectable smell of tabana gas residue, used in certain types of advanced energy weapons. Lyra had, through sheer persistence and leveraging her status as a xeno specialist, attached herself to the search party. She claimed an interest in Xylos' unique ecosystem and its potential impact on diverse refugee physiologies. In truth, Thorne's involvement was her primary motivator. She moved with an unnerving silence for someone her size, her senses far keener than any human's. It was Lyra who found the first definitive clue. Crouched low, she examined a patch of disturbed soil. This was not a native life form, she stated, her voice devoid of inflection. She pointed to a minuscule, almost invisible metallic shard embedded in the rock. Manufactured, high tensile strength. Kael knelt beside her, examining the shard. Military-grade alloy. Not standard Federation issue. His eyes met hers, a silent acknowledgement of shared suspicion passing between them. This was no animal attack. The discovery escalated quickly. As they ventured deeper into the canyon, they found the remains of the patrol. The scene was brutal efficient. No bodies left, only scorched earth, and the telltale signs of energy weapon discharges that cauterized as they killed. There were also strange, viscous residues on the canyon walls, unlike anything Kael had seen. They were taken. Lyra murmured, her nostrils flaring as she tasted the air. Not just killed, taken. Her hand instinctively went to her side, where beneath her tunic, Kael guessed, she kept her natural defenses close. Suddenly, the air crackled. A shimmer distortion appeared on the canyon ridge above them. Figures emerged tall, clad in matte black armor that seemed to absorb the light, their helmets concealing any features. They carried heavy pulse rifles. Mercenaries. Kael had seen their type before, ruthless, efficient, loyal only to their paymasters. The obsidian hand. Their reputation was as dark as their armor. "Ambush!" Kael yelled, shoving Lyra towards a narrow crevice in the rock face. "Get down!" Plasma bolts slammed into the ground where they'd been standing, kicking up clouds of acrid dust. The rest of the search party scattered, some returning fire, others falling almost immediately to the mercenaries' superior firepower and positioning. Kael returned fire with his standard-issue sidearm, knowing it was mostly a delaying tactic. "We need to fall back! Regroup at the lander!" he shouted over the din. Lyra, however, didn't immediately retreat. Her eyes, slitted now like a feline's, were fixed on the mercenaries. A low growl rumbled in her chest. These were not honorable warriors. They were butchers. An affront. One of the mercenaries, larger than the others, with distinctive red markings on its helmet, pointed towards Lyra. A modulated voice boomed. Secure the Cathar asset? Alive? Kaelin's blood ran cold. Asset? They were specifically after Lyra. This changed everything. His mission parameters had just been violently rewritten. Lyra, we have to move. Now! He urged, grabbing her arm. She seemed to snap out of her battle focus, her gaze shifting to him. There was a flicker of something new in her eyes, not just academic interest, but perhaps a dawning realization of shared peril. She nodded curtly. This way, she said, her voice tight, pointing towards a barely perceptible fissure in the canyon wall. One Kaelin had missed. It leads deeper, not back. They will expect us to retreat. Her knowledge of terrain, even alien terrain, was impressive. Kaelin didn't hesitate. His methodical mind processed the new data. The mercenaries wanted Lyra. They were heavily armed, and escape was paramount. Lead on, he said, covering their entry into the narrow passage as more plasma fire rained down. The immediate consequences of their encounter were stark. They were cut off, hunted, and Lyra was a specific target. The fragile piece of Xylos had been shattered, and Kaelin's undercover mission had just become a desperate fight for survival, inextricably linked with the enigmatic Sandstrider. As they plunged into the darkness of the crevice, the sounds of battle fading behind them, a new, unwilling alliance was forged in the crucible of immediate danger. Lyra's earlier academic detachment was gone, replaced by a grim focus. She knew these mercenaries were not random aggressors. Her forbidden lore, the whispers of future conflicts, had hinted at forces seeking to manipulate life's fundamental energies. Her presence here, her very being, was apparently a catalyst. The thought chilled her more than the dank air of the passage. The narrow fissure twisted and turned, descending into the belly of Xylos. Kaelin, despite his experience in subterranean environments, found himself relying on Lyra's uncanny ability to navigate the pitch-black tunnels. Her eyes, he realized, possessed a natural nocturnal adaptation far superior to his own. The air grew colder, damper. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the drip of water echoing in unseen chambers. They identified you, Kaelin said, his voice low, after they had put some distance between themselves and the ambush site. Called you an asset. Lyra paused, her silhouette barely visible. My people, we possess certain unique biological traits. Some consider them valuable. The understatement was palpable. Valuable enough for the obsidian hand to be deployed. Kaelin pressed. They don't come cheap. Who hired them? I do not know, she admitted, a trace of frustration in her tone. But my research, my presence here, was meant to be discreet. Clearly it was not discreet enough. She hesitated. The lore I carry, it speaks of powers that seek to pervert the very essence of life. Perhaps they believe the Cathar hold a key. Kaelin filed this away. Essence of life. It sounded alarmingly close to rumors he'd heard about clandestine genetic experimentation by fringe groups. Their escape route eventually opened into a vast subterranean cavern, dimly illuminated by phosphorescent fungi clinging to the walls, casting eerie blue and green shadows. In the center of the cavern, a chasm plunged into utter blackness, a chilling wind sighing from its depths. They needed to cross it. A narrow, precarious-looking rock bridge, barely wide enough for one person, was their only option. We need to keep moving, Kaelin said, assessing the bridge. They'll have trackers, or they'll seal the canyon entrance and flush us out. Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the chasm. This place feels old and sorrowful. As Kaelin started across the bridge, testing each step, disaster struck. A sudden tremor shook the cavern. Rocks rained down from the ceiling. The bridge beneath Kaelin's feet groaned, then cracked. He stumbled, windmilling his arms for balance, but the section he was on gave way. With a shout, he plunged towards the abyss. Instinctively, Lyra reacted. She lunged forward, her movements a blur. From her forearms' long razor-sharp claws, the color of obsidian shot out with an audible shink. Simultaneously, whip-like energy tendrils, crackling with faint blue light, erupted from her back, lashing out like sentient vines. One tendril, impossibly fast, wrapped around Kaelin's wrist just as he fell past the crumbling edge, yanking him up short with a force that nearly dislocated his shoulder. He hung there, suspended over the terrifying blackness, the energy tendril biting into his skin. Above him, Lyra strained, her feet braced against the cavern floor, her claws dug deep into the rock for purchase. Her face was a mask of intense effort, her usually composed features contorted. Hold on, Thorn, she gritted out, the words strained. The tendril pulsed with energy, and Kaelin felt a strange warmth spread from its contact point, counteracting the numbing cold of the chasm's updraft. Slowly, agonizingly, she began to pull him up. Her muscles, lean but incredibly powerful, corded beneath her scaled skin. Dust and small rocks dislodged by her effort rained down on him. Kaelin, despite the pain in his arm and the sheer terror of his predicament, found himself marveling at her strength, her unexpected, life-saving intervention. This was no mere academic. This was a warrior. With a final, desperate heave, she hauled him back onto the relative safety of the cavern floor beside the chasm. He collapsed, gasping for breath, his heart hammering against his ribs. Lyra, too, was breathing heavily, the energy tendrils retracting slowly into her back, the claws into her forearms, leaving no trace of their existence except for the deep gouges in the rock. Kaelin looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time. The composed xenoanthropologist was gone. In her place was a fierce, powerful being who had just saved his life at considerable risk to her own. There was a raw, protective intensity in her dark eyes that he hadn't seen before. "My thanks," he managed, his voice hoarse. "You didn't have to do that." Lyra slowly got to her feet, shaking slightly from the exertion. A Cathar does not abandon a companion in peril. It is a matter of honor. She avoided his gaze, looking instead at the chasm. "Besides," she added, a touch of her old dryness returning, "my study of your species would be significantly hampered by your premature demise." Despite the lingering fear, Kaelin felt a genuine smile touch his lips. "I'll try to be a more durable subject." The near-death experience, Lyra's dramatic rescue, had irrevocably changed their dynamic. They were no longer just a reluctant human subject and an observant alien scholar. They were two individuals who had faced death together, bound by an unexpected act of valor. The obsidian hand was still out there, hunting them, but now a fragile thread of trust born of shared crisis had begun to weave itself between them. They were forced into continued proximity, deeper into the unknown dangers of Xylos' underbelly, their survival now utterly dependent on one another. The mercenaries' pursuit intensified their need for cooperation. Lyra's Cathar honor, Kaelin realized, was far more than a cultural quirk. It was a profound, actionable code, and he had just become a beneficiary of its most potent tenet. The ground beneath their feet was still unstable, both literally and figuratively, but for the first time, Kaelin felt a flicker of something other than professional assessment towards the sand strider. And Lyra, shaken by the intensity of her own protective reaction, found herself reevaluating the impassive human who had, until moments ago, been merely Explorer Thorn. He had faced death with a remarkable lack of panic, his focus on survival absolute. There was a core of steel within him that her Cathar senses resonated with. Their journey through the subterranean labyrinth continued for what felt like days. The phosphorescent fungi became their only timepiece, its glow waxing and waning in some unknown rhythm. Kaelin's arm, though not broken, was badly sprained, and the energy tendril had left burn like marks that throbbed incessantly. Lyra, using her knowledge of Cathar field medicine, fashioned a crude poultice from some bioluminescent moss and cave lichen, her touch surprisingly gentle as she applied it. "This will reduce the inflammation," she explained, her voice softer than he'd heard it. "The energy signature of my tendrils can be aggressive to foreign tissues." "Aggressive, but effective," Kaelin said, wincing slightly as she secured the bandage with a strip of his torn shirt. "I've never seen anything like those tendrils." "Or the claws." Lyra finished her work, then sat back on her haunches, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "They are a part of us. The Cathar evolved on a harsh world, where survival demanded versatility." She paused. "We do not display them readily. It is considered a last resort. Or a statement." "What kind of statement?" "That a line has been crossed. That negotiations are over." Her eyes flickered with a dangerous light. "The obsidian hand crossed that line when they targeted the patrol, when they targeted me." The Cathar code of vengeance was clearly stirring within her. Kaelin saw an opening. "You mentioned forbidden lore, Lyra, and that the mercenaries might believe the Cathar hold a key." "What kind of key?" She was silent for a long moment, studying his face. The trust forged by the Chazan incident was still new, fragile. "It is complex. Our most ancient texts, the ones the current High Council deems heretical, speak of the Sa'arioth, the Song of Creation." Kaelin's interest sharpened. "Song of Creation?" "Yes. Not a song in your human auditory sense, precisely. More a vibrational resonance." a pattern of cosmic energy that, according to the lore, shaped the early universe and can, under the right conditions, quicken barren worlds. Bring forth life from desolation. She looked away, towards the glowing fungi. It is said that the first Cathar were sung into existence on our homeworld by this resonance, and that a fragment of it remains within our genetic memory, within our very essence. Kaelin was stunned. This was beyond anything Concord intelligence had ever hinted at regarding the Cathar. And this forbidden lore, you're a keeper of it. My lineage was tasked with its preservation through generations. The current regime fears it. They believe it could destabilize their power, which is built on rigid control and the denial of our deeper connection to the cosmos. They preach that we are masters of our own destiny, not vessels of ancient songs. She sighed, a sound like wind through dry reeds. Perhaps they are right to fear it. Such power, if misused, could be what the Obsidian Hand, and whoever hired them, are after. Kaelin finished, the pieces clicking into place. Hybridizing species to create a perfect soldier was one thing, but if they could somehow harness this song of creation through Lyra, the implications were terrifying. They could create armies, reshape worlds to their liking, wield power on a galactic scale. Their shared challenges continued. They navigated treacherous passages, evaded patrols of what seemed to be seal and cave creatures, large, insectoid beings with multiple eyes that clicked and whirred in the darkness, and rationed the last of their supplies. During one particularly harrowing encounter, they were cornered in a narrow tunnel by a pack of these creatures. Kaelin, despite his injured arm, used his tactical knowledge to create a bottleneck, while Lyra, with a primal roar, unleashed her claws and spines, short, sharp barbs that shot from her shoulders and outer thighs, creating a deadly defensive perimeter. Her movements were a blur of scaled fury, in a terrifying dance of death that held the creatures at bay long enough for Kaelin to find a weak point in the tunnel wall and blast their way through with the last of his utility charges. Afterward, exhausted and covered in dust and ichor, they collapsed in the new passage. Lyra was breathing heavily, her spine slowly retracting. There was a wildness in her eyes that Kaelin had not seen before, a raw, untamed power. "You are formidable," Kaelin said, genuine admiration in his voice. She looked at her hands, still faintly shimmering where her claws had been. "It is what I am, Thorn. What my people are, beneath the veneer of civilization we present to the galaxy. There's nothing uncivilized about protecting yourself." "Protecting us," Kaelin corrected gently. He saw the conflict in her, the warrior, the scholar, the lore keeper, all wrestling for dominance. His own unflappable demeanor seemed to have a calming effect on her. He would methodically assess each threat, formulate a plan, and execute it, his calm a counterpoint to her more fiery Cathar nature. Slowly, barriers were breaking down. Lyra began to share more fragments of her forbidden lore, humming snatches of melodies that were strangely resonant, making the air around them thrum with an almost imperceptible energy. Kaelin, in turn, spoke of his explorations, not the sanitized versions from the public record, but the real challenges, the ethical dilemmas, the moments of profound discovery. He found her insights into alien cultures and motivations surprisingly astute, far beyond simple academic curiosity. One evening, huddled together for warmth in a small alcove, as the temperature in the caves plummeted, Lyra noticed Kaelin wince as he shifted his injured arm. Without a word, she reached out, her long, scaled fingers gently probing the bandage. "The inflammation persists," she murmured. "The human physiology is surprisingly fragile in some respects. Comes with the territory of not having natural armor or retractable claws," Kaelin said, trying for a light tone, though her proximity was unsettlingly pleasant. Her hand lingered on his arm for a moment longer than necessary. Her touch was cool, but not unpleasant. He could feel the faint thrum of energy that seemed to emanate from her. "My energy tendrils, they can also heal, if used with focus. The lore speaks of it. It is a finer manipulation of the same energies." Kaelin looked at her, surprised. "You'd do that?" She met his gaze, her obsidian eyes searching his. "The debt of honor for saving my life at the chasm, it is significant, Thorn. And your continued well-being is strategically advantageous for our survival." Despite the pragmatic words, there was a softness in her expression that belied them. "All right, Lyra, if you think it will help." She nodded, then closed her eyes for a moment, her breathing deepening. When she opened them, a faint blue glow emanated from her palms. She carefully unwrapped the poultice, then placed her hands gently over his injured arm. Kael braced himself for a jolt, but instead, a soothing warmth spread through his tissues, chasing away the throbbing ache. It was an incredibly intimate act, this sharing of her energy. He watched her face, a new vulnerability there, a deep concentration. The faint, melodic hum he'd heard her make before seemed to emanate from her, vibrating through her hands into him. He could feel the damaged tissues knitting, the inflammation receding. It was unlike any medical treatment he'd ever experienced. After several long minutes, she withdrew her hands, the glow fading. She looked tired, but a small, almost shy smile touched her lips. Better? She asked. Kael flexed his arm. The pain was significantly reduced, the mobility almost fully restored. Incredible, he breathed. Lyra, thank you. The Cathar understand the balance of energies, Thorn. Giving and taking, harm and healing. She leaned back against the cave wall, a comfortable silence settling between them. The romantic tension, unspoken but undeniably present, thickened the air. Shared glances lasted longer, physical proximity became less accidental, more sought. He was beginning to see beyond the alien, beyond the warrior to the complex, intelligent, and surprisingly compassionate woman beneath. And Lyra, for all her Cathar reserve and suspicion of outsiders, found herself increasingly drawn to the human male's steady strength, his quiet integrity, and the unexpected kindness in his eyes. The lines of study subject and reluctant ally were blurring into something far more profound. Her strict codes of honor were being challenged not by force, but by a growing, unwelcome, yet undeniable affection for this human who was so different from her own kind, yet shared a similar core of resilience. She found herself thinking less about Cathar vengeance against the obsidian hand, and more about Kaelin's safety, his survival. This shift was unsettling, yet strangely liberating. The relative peace of their subterranean journey was shattered when they stumbled upon an obsidian hand patrolled deep within the cave system. It was clear the mercenaries were systematically searching the tunnels, likely using sophisticated scanners. Kael and Lyra were forced into a desperate flight, the sounds of plasma fire echoing behind them. They're hurting us, Kael panted as they squeezed through another tight passage. Towards something. Lyra nodded, her breath coming in ragged gasps. I sense a convergence of unnatural energies ahead. A place of wrongness. The mercenaries were relentless, their tactics brutal and efficient. Kael and Lyra fought back when cornered, their skills complementing each other, Kaelin's tactical thinking and marksmanship, Lyra's terrifying close combat prowess and energy manipulation. During one fierce skirmish in a larger cavern, Lyra manifested her energy tendrils not just for attack, but defensively, weaving them into a shimmering, temporary shield that deflected several plasma bolts meant for Kael. The effort visibly drained her, but it saved his life once again. We can't keep this up, Kael said, pulling her behind a large crystalline formation as another volley of fire stitched across the rock face. They're too many, too well equipped. The song, Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. They are not just hunting me for my biology, Thorn. They want to use me to amplify it, to control it. The lore it warns of perversions, of the song being twisted into a weapon. It was then that Kael understood the true stakes. The perfect soldier wasn't just about hybrid genetics. It was about weaponizing the very force of creation itself, using Lyra as a living conduit. They managed to evade their pursuers temporarily by triggering a minor cave-in, blocking the passage behind them. Huddled in the darkness, listening to the frustrated shouts of the mercenaries, the emotional and romantic connection between them reached a critical point. Kael gently took Lyra's hand. Her scaled skin was cool, but her grip was strong, surprisingly comforting. Lyra, he said, his voice low and earnest. We're in this together. Whatever happens, I won't let them take you. I won't let them do that to you, or to this song. She looked at him, her obsidian eyes luminous in the gloom. The suspicion, the academic distance, was entirely gone, replaced by a raw, open emotion that mirrored his own. Kael, she breathed his name, the Cathar formality, finally dropping. I have never trusted an off-worlder. My people, we are taught to be wary. But you fight with honor. You protect without seeking reward. Some things are worth protecting, he said, his gaze holding hers. A tremor of emotion ran through her. The Cathar believe that when two souls face extreme peril together and survive, their spirits become intertwined. A bond is forged that transcends bloodlines, even species. I think I understand that belief now, Kael admitted. He leaned closer, and she did not pull away. The air crackled with unspoken feelings, with the terrifying reality of their situation and the undeniable pull between them. "Kaelin," she whispered, her voice husky. "I am afraid. Not of death. But of what they intend. Of the song being silenced, or worse, corrupted." He cupped her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her scaled skin. "Then we fight. Not just for our lives, but for that song. For the hope it represents." Her eyes searched his, finding only sincerity and a fierce protectiveness that resonated deep within her. In that moment, surrounded by darkness and danger, with the enemy closing in, Lyra made a choice that went against centuries of Cathar tradition and her own ingrained suspicions. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Her kiss was unlike anything Kaelin had ever experienced. It was hesitant at first, then deepened with a desperate intensity. There was the coolness of her scales, the faint, exotic scent of her skin, and an underlying thrum of energy that seemed to pass between them, as if the song itself was resonating with their connection. It was a kiss of shared fear, of dawning love, of defiance against the forces that sought to tear them apart. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the cavern around them seemed a little less dark, the threat a little less overwhelming. Their bond was no longer unspoken, it was sealed, a silent vow made in the face of impending doom. "The path ahead," Lyra said, her voice stronger now, a new resolve hardening her features. "I sense it. They are driving us towards an ancient place. A focal point of Xylos' deep energies. The lore calls such places womb of potential, or graves of ambition. Then that's where we make our stand," Kaelin declared, his hand still linked with hers. His undercover mission, his legendary explorer past, all of it had funneled down to this, protecting this extraordinary woman and the universe-altering secret she carried. The stakes couldn't be higher, but now, he wasn't fighting just for survival, or for a mission. He was fighting for Lyra, for the future they might dare to build together. If they could only survive the coming storm. The mercenaries would find them soon. They had to prepare. The tenderness of their shared moment solidified into a grim determination. The universe had thrown them together in the most unexpected of unions. Now, they would fight for their love and the new life Lyra's song promised. The respite granted by the cave-in was short-lived. The Obsidian Hand mercenaries, relentless and well-equipped, soon blasted their way through the rubble. Kaelin and Lyra were on the move again, deeper into the planet's crust, the air growing warmer, humid, and charged with an unfamiliar energy. Lyra's senses were heightened, guiding them through a network of natural lava tubes and crystalline chambers that pulsed with a faint, internal light. "They are close," she murmured, her head tilted, listening to vibrations Kaelin couldn't perceive. "And the place they are driving us to, it feels like a wound in the planet. Ancient, yet recently disturbed." Kaelin checked his depleted energy pack for his sidearm. "We need a plan. We can't fight their full force head-on. The Cathar have a saying," Lyra said, her eyes glinting. "When the desert storm rages, the wise viper finds the deepest hole and waits for the scorpion to pass overhead, then strikes from below. Meaning we find a defensible position and use the terrain to our advantage." "Precisely. And perhaps use their arrogance against them." A subtle smile played on her lips. Her Cathar mind, honed by millennia of survival in harsh environments, was already formulating strategies. They emerged into a colossal cavern, so vast its ceiling was lost in shadow. In the center, a massive, tiered rock formation rose like a dark ziggurat. Strange, pulsating veins of an unknown, faintly glowing mineral latticed its surface. At its apex was a flat, circular platform, stained with something dark. It was undeniably an altar, ancient and forbidding. Arc lights, clearly modern additions, cast harsh shadows, illuminating heavily armed Obsidian Hand mercenaries patrolling its base and figures moving on the platform itself. The sacrificial altar. Lyra breathed, a chill in her voice despite the cavern's heat. The lore speaks of such places, where energies can be focused, amplified, or drained. Kaelin's eyes narrowed. "That's their target, and you're the key." He saw more mercenaries converging from other tunnels, effectively sealing off any escape. They were cornered. "All right, Viper," he said, turning to Lyra. "Time to find our hole." Lyra scanned the cavern quickly, her gaze fixed on a series of narrow, steam-filled fissures near the base of the altar, partially obscured by jagged rock formations. "There, the geothermal vents. They will mask our heat signatures, at least for a while. And the steam will provide cover." They moved with desperate speed, slipping into the scalding, sulfurous steam just as a searchlight swept past their position. The heat was intense, the air thick and difficult to breathe, but it offered concealment. From their vantage point, they could observe the altar. On the platform, a figure in elaborate, dark robes, clearly not a mercenary, was overseeing the placement of complex technological devices. Kael recognized some of the components: energy regulators, biomonitors, and something that looked disturbingly like a genetic sequencer array. This was the mastermind, the one who hired the Obsidian Hand. The Chroma Collective. Kael hissed, recognizing the robed figure's insignia: stylized, multi-hued spiral. Rumored to be fanatics obsessed with perfecting life through forced genetic amalgamation. They've been operating in the shadows for years. They seek to create an aberration, a soldier born of stolen life force and twisted song. Lyra said, her voice laced with cold fury. They will fail. We need to disable that equipment, Kael stated, his mind racing, and get to that leader. But first, we thin out their numbers. Lyra nodded. The steam is our ally here, and my gifts. Her hands flexed, the faint outline of her claws visible beneath her skin. Their preparation was swift, relying on their combined skills and the deepening trust between them. Kael outlined a plan: use the steam vents and narrow passages around the altar's base to pick off isolated mercenary patrols, creating diversions, sowing confusion. Lyra, with her superior senses and silent movement, would be the primary hunter, while Kael provided tactical support and covered their retreats. Their goal was to disrupt the ritual preparations and, if possible, neutralize the Chroma Collective leader before Lyra could be captured and forcibly integrated into their horrific experiment. The Song of Creation was not just a legend. Kael had felt its faint resonance through Lyra, a power of immense good. In the hands of the Chroma Collective, it would become an unimaginable horror. As the robed figure on the altar began a low, guttural chant, the strange veins on the ziggurat pulsed with increased intensity. The air crackled. Time was running out. Ready? Kael asked, his eyes meeting Lyra's. A fierce light burned in her gaze. For Xylos. For the song. For us? With a shared nod, they melted into the steam, two desperate figures against an army, ready to face their destiny at the heart of the sacrificial altar. The final confrontation was about to begin. The air in the vast cavern grew heavy, thick with the stench of sulfur from the vents, and the almost palpable thrum of unnatural energies emanating from the altar. The Chroma Collective leader, a gaunt figure whose face was hidden in the deep shadows of their hood, raised their arms. The chanting intensified, resonating with the glowing veins in the rock, which now pulsed in an urgent, sickening rhythm. They are beginning the primary resonance sequence. Lyra whispered, her voice tight with urgency, her Cathar senses overloaded by the perversion of energy. We must act now, Kael nodded. Phase 1? Create chaos? They slipped from the cover of the steam vents. Lyra, moving with the silent grace of a desert predator, targeted a lone mercenary guarding a narrow access tunnel to the altar's lower levels. Before the soldier could even register her presence, her obsidian claws flashed. It was swift, brutal, and silent. She dragged the body into the shadows. Kael, meanwhile, used his knowledge of demolitions to sabotage a nearby power conduit, feeding some of the auxiliary lights, plunging a section of the cavern into deeper shadow. Shouts of surprise and confusion erupted from the mercenaries. The Cathar asset is loose! Find her! The modulated voice of the Obsidian Hand commander boomed through the cavern, echoing off the rock walls. This was their cue. Using the ensuing confusion, Kael and Lyra launched a series of hit-and-run attacks. Lyra was a whirlwind of scaled fury. Her claws tore through armor, her barbed spines launched with pinpoint accuracy, disabled weapons and pinned limbs. Her energy tendrils lashed out, not just to strike, but to create momentary disruptions in the mercenaries' comm systems, sowing further discord. Kael, methodical and precise, picked off targets of opportunity with his sidearm, always covering Lyra, his leadership instincts guiding their deadly dance. He laid down suppressing fire, called out enemy positions, and anticipated their moves, his unflappable calm a stark contrast to Lyra's elemental fury. They fought as one, their movements seamlessly coordinated, a testament to the bond forged in the tunnels below. Kael would draw their fire, allowing Lyra to flank and strike. Lyra would clear a path, her Cathar senses warning of unseen threats, allowing Kael to advance. The mercenaries, though numerous and heavily armed, were accustomed to conventional warfare. Not this fluid, unpredictable assault from two highly skilled individuals working in perfect synergy. Despite their successes, the sheer number of mercenaries began to tell. Kael took a plasma bolt to his shoulder, the impact spinning him around. He grunted in pain, but stayed on his feet. Lyra, seeing him hit, let out a furious roar. A wave of pure kinetic energy, tinged with blue light, erupted from her, staggering the nearby mercenaries, and giving Kael a precious second to recover. The altar. Kael yelled, pointing. The Chroma collective leader was now gesturing towards a containment field that had just shimmered into existence on the central platform. They're preparing to receive you? They had to reach the summit. Fighting their way up the ziggurat's tiers was a brutal, close-quarters struggle. Mercenaries rained fire from above, while others charged up from below. Lyra, her body a blur of motion, became a living shield for Kael at times, her natural armor deflecting glancing blows, her energy tendrils whipping out to disarm or disable. Kael, in turn, used his last explosive charge to take out a heavy weapon emplacement that threatened to pin them down. Finally, bloodied and exhausted, they reached the summit. The Chroma collective leader stood before them, flanked by two heavily armored elite obsidian handguards. The air here was thick with the ritual's energy, making Kael's teeth ache and Lyra's visibly tremble. The Sand Strider? The leader rasped, their voice distorted by a vocalizer, cold and devoid of emotion. You have arrived. A little uncooperative, but no matter. Your unique biological resonance with the song of creation will soon belong to the collective. This perversion ends now. Lyra snarled, her claws fully extended, crackling with bioenergy. The two elite guards moved to intercept them. The fight was desperate. Kael engaged one, his movements economical, precise, using his combat knife and every dirty trick he knew. Lyra faced the other, a towering brute. It was a clash of raw power against agile fury. Her claws raked across the guard's armor, seeking purchase, while his heavy fists tried to crush her. Kael, seeing an opening, disabled his opponent with a precise strike to a vulnerable joint, then spun to help Lyra. But the Chroma collective leader chose that moment to act. They raised a strange, rod-like device, and a beam of debilitating sonic energy struck Lyra. She cried out, her body convulsing, her natural weapons retracting as she collapsed to her knees, her connection to her internal energies disrupted. No. Kael roared, charging towards the leader, but the remaining elite guard intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. Kael fought fiercely, but the guard was immensely strong. As they wrestled, Kael saw the Chroma leader approach the weakened Lyra, the rod held high. Your essence will fuel a new era of soldiers, Cathar. The leader hissed, a perfect, unfeeling army, born of your corrupted song. Desperation fueled Kael. He slammed his head back into the guard's helmet, momentarily dazing him. He scrambled free, but knew he wouldn't reach Lyra in time. Then, Lyra, even in her weakened state, looked up. Her eyes met Kael's. In them he saw not defeat but a burning, defiant resolve. And he saw a plan. She subtly gestured with her eyes towards the complex array of equipment surrounding the altar, the energy regulators for the ritual. He understood. If they couldn't stop the leader directly, they could overload the system. It was a massive risk. The resulting energy discharge could destroy them all. Lyra, he yelled, hoping she'd understand his intent. He lunged for the main control console of the ritual array, ignoring the leader and the recovering guard. The Chroma leader, momentarily distracted by Kael's unexpected move, hesitated. That was all Lyra needed. With a final monumental effort of will, she forced out a single, pure note of the true song of creation, not the loud, weaponized version the collective sought, but a clear, resonant tone filled with life and harmony. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated creative energy. The effect was instantaneous. The corrupted energies of the ritual faltered, thrown into dissonance by the purity of her song. The glowing veins on the altar sputtered and dimmed. The equipment Kael was now frantically trying to overload began to shriek, warning lights flashing. The Chroma leader screamed in rage and frustration. Silence her. Complete the sequence. But it was too late. Kael found the primary energy conduit and, using his knife, managed to sever the safety protocols, then rerouted the full power of the geothermal source directly into the ritual array. The altar began to shake violently. Energy arced between the machines. Lyra's pure note, combined with the massive energy surge Kael unleashed, created an uncontrolled feedback loop. The system is overloading. One of the mercenaries yelled from below, just before a massive wave of raw, Chaotic energy erupted from the altar. Kael threw himself towards Lyra, covering her body with his own as the shockwave hit. The world dissolved into blinding light and a deafening roar. The last thing he saw was the Chroma Collective leader consumed by the very energies they sought to control, their robes igniting as the dark ritual collapsed in upon itself. The sacrificial altar, intended as a birthplace for monstrous soldiers, became a pyre for its creator's ambition. Darkness. Then, a throbbing pain in his head, his shoulder everywhere. Kael coughed, dust and grit filling his mouth. He slowly pushed himself up, his ears ringing. The vast cavern was a wreck. The great altar was shattered, smoking ruins. Bodies of obsidian hand mercenaries lay strewn across the cavern floor, disabled or killed by the energy backlash. The complex machinery was twisted, molten slag. Beneath him, Lyra stirred, groaning. He gently helped her sit up. She was bruised, exhausted, but alive. Her eyes, when they met his, were filled with a mixture of relief and profound weariness. Kael, she whispered, her voice raspy. Well, we did it. We did, he confirmed, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. He looked around. The immediate threat of the Chroma Collective and their mercenaries was gone, annihilated by their own corrupted ritual. The song, is it safe? Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, then a faint, tired smile touched her lips. It is quiet again, at peace. And I feel it still within me, unbroken. Relief, so potent it was almost debilitating, flooded Kael. They had survived, they had won. He helped her to her feet, their bodies aching, supporting each other. The silence in the cavern was profound after the chaos of the battle and the ritual's cataclysmic failure. Suddenly, a new sound reached them. A faint, ethereal chiming, seeming to come from the very rock around them. The air shimmered in several places, and translucent, vaguely humanoid forms began to coalesce. They were beings of pure light, their forms shifting and flowing like captured aurora. The Lumina. Kael and Lyra tensed, unsure if this was a new threat. But the Lumina did not approach with hostility. Instead, they drifted closer, their light pulsing gently. One of them, slightly brighter than the others, extended a luminous tendril towards Lyra. Lyra, instead of recoiling, seemed to understand. She slowly reached out her own hand. As her scaled fingers neared the Lumina's light, the chiming intensified, becoming a harmonious melody. The Lumina pulsed with brighter, warmer colors. They are thanking us. Lyra breathed, wonder in her voice. This cavern, this altar, it was built upon one of their sacred sites. The Chroma Collective's ritual was hurting them, polluting their existence. Kael realized that these must be the native silent entities he'd heard whispers about, the energy beings misunderstood and feared by the early colonists. They existed in a different state of matter, their lives intertwined with the planet's geothermal and energetic flows. The song, Lyra continued, a look of dawning comprehension on her face. My pure note. It resonated with them. It cleansed the corruption. They understood its true nature. The Lumina swirled around them, their light casting a soft, healing glow. Kael felt some of his aches and pains receding, a sense of peace settling over him. The energy beings weren't hostile, they were ancient, sentient, and deeply connected to Xylos. The Chroma Collective, in their arrogance, had not only sought to corrupt the song of creation, but had also desecrated a holy place of another species. In the wake of the destruction, a new understanding was dawning. Kael and Lyra, through their desperate fight, had not only saved themselves and protected the song, but had inadvertently become ambassadors to a species no one else had truly comprehended. Their personal choice to fight, to risk everything, now had broader implications for the future of Xylos. The immediate crisis was over, but the journey of healing and understanding was just beginning. Kael looked at Lyra, her face illuminated by the Lumina's gentle light, and knew their bond, forged in fire and sacrifice, was now unbreakable. They had faced death and darkness, and emerged into a new, unexpected light. A few weeks later, Xylos was beginning to heal. The destruction in the deep cavern had, paradoxically, opened up new avenues of understanding. News of the Lumina, the sentient energy beings native to Xylos, spread through the refugee colony, not as a tale of monstrous entities, but as one of misunderstood sentience. Kael and Lyra, their testimonies carefully managed by Kael to protect Lyra's deeper secrets, while revealing the truth about the Chroma Collective, had become reluctant heroes. Kaelin's undercover mission had concluded in a way he could never have anticipated. The Concord was now actively working with the Terran Federation to establish peaceful communication protocols with the Lumina, guided by Lyra's unique sensitivity to their energetic language and Kaelin's diplomatic acumen. The fear and prejudice that had clouded the initial perception of Xylos' author. Inhabitants were slowly giving way to curiosity and respect. Lyra found herself in an unexpected role. No longer just a xenoanthropologist or a clandestine lore keeper, she was a bridge between worlds, between states of matter. The Cathar High Council, upon learning a sanitized version of events, focusing on her bravery against a dangerous cult and her role in interspecies diplomacy, had grudgingly acknowledged her value. Though the forbidden lore she carried remained a point of contention, she knew she would have to navigate carefully in the future. Her suspicion of recorded images remained, but she found herself allowing Kael to sketch her likeness in his private journal, a small concession to their shared history, his hand gentle as he captured her likeness, not as a specimen, but as someone cherished. They stood on a bluff overlooking the now thriving main settlement of Xylos. The air was clean, the sky a brilliant azure. Below, humans, Cathar, and a dozen other refugee species worked side by side, building a new home, their efforts subtly aided by the Lumina, who now manifested as shimmering lights that guided construction efforts around geologically sensitive areas or warned of impending seismic tremors. "It's different," Kael said, his arm around Lyra's waist. Hopeful. Lyra leaned against him, the fine scales of her arm warm against his skin. The song of creation is about potential, Kael, about new beginnings, even from ashes. A faint melodic hum, barely audible, emanated from her, and the hardy Sealan flora around them seemed to brighten, to reach a little more eagerly for the sun. "Your people?" Kael mused. "Do they understand what you truly carry, what you protected?" She sighed. "Some, perhaps in their hearts. But power, even the power of creation, frightens those who cling to control. My path with them will be complex." She looked up at him, her obsidian eyes soft. "But I am no longer walking it alone." Kael smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. Never alone. Their love, born amidst chaos and violence, had blossomed into something strong and enduring. An unexpected union across the stars. They had fought for their love, and, in doing so, had helped birth a new understanding, a new life for Xylos and its diverse inhabitants. The Chroma Collective was a stark warning, but their defeat, and the subsequent acceptance of the Lumina, had sent ripples through the galactic concord, prompting new inquiries into other misunderstood or marginalized species. The future was still uncertain, filled with challenges. The remnants of the Obsidian Hand might seek retribution. Other factions might covet the song of creation, but Kael and Lyra would face it together. He, the unflappable leader with a core of unwavering integrity, she, the fierce sandstrider, guardian of ancient wisdom, her heart now open to a love that transcended cultural boundaries and biological differences. As the twin suns of Xylos began to set, painting the sky in hues of fire and amethyst, Lyra turned to Kael. "There is an old Cathar saying," she said, a rare, full smile gracing her lips. "When the two moons align with the heart star, destiny finds its true path." Kael drew her closer. "Then our stars are aligned, Lyra." Their journey had been one of hardship and revelation, but it had led them here, to a new world brimming with potential, their love a beacon against the lingering shadows. Across the vastness of space, two souls had found each other, fought for each other, and in doing so, had not only saved a world but had also found their own unexpected, extraordinary new life, a testament to the enduring power of connection in a galaxy of endless wonders and perils. Their song had just begun,